and thank you for joining us on FutureTV. I'm Lina Tamim, and these are today's top stories. President Michel Sleiman and Gulf Cooperation Council ambassadors discuss Lebanon's suggestion to help it confront the influx of Syrian refugees. Interior Minister Marwan Sharbil hails the efforts of the army to restore calm in Tripoli. And former South African President Nelson Mandela is in a serious but stable condition in hospital with a recurrence of a lung infection. President Michel Sleiman and Gulf Cooperation Council ambassadors have discussed Lebanon's suggestion to help it confront the influx of Syrian refugees. A statement issued by Baghdad Palace said the meeting, which was attended by Foreign Minister Adnan Mansour, tackled the proposals made by Lebanese authorities for the contribution of several states in sharing the burden of the refugees. The diplomats promised to inform their respective governments about the proposals. The UN on Friday said that a total of $3.8 billion is needed to help Syrian refugees who have spilled across the country's border to escape fighting at home. The figure for operations inside Syria was put at another $1.4 billion. Lebanon and Jordan have asked donors for $450 million and $380 million, respectively. Violence has completely halted in the northern city of Tripoli. Reporters on the ground say army patrols and checkpoints were deployed throughout the city, particularly between Bab al-Tabani and Jabal Mahsen. Traffic remained light as shops reopened after a one-week halt of work. Interior Minister Marwan Sharbil hailed the efforts of the army and internal security forces in Tripoli, aiming to restore peace and stability in the region. In this context, he pointed out that the army will not abandon its plan to route to the capital of northern Lebanon, regardless of the cost, thanking all parties who provided political cover for the military institution. Syrian helicopters fired 6 rockets overnight into the Bekaa Valley, northeast Lebanon. Security sources said the rockets were fired in Wadi Hmed, near the border town of Arsal. Another source of Bekaa said that the helicopters had attacked area twice early in the morning. The attack was the latest in a series related to the escalating war in Syria, in which Hezbollah has become fully engaged. Lebanon towns have repeatedly been struck by gunfire and rockets as Syria's war spills across the northern border areas. Rebels have claimed responsibility for some rocket attacks, while the Syrian army has launched attacks into the country as well. On Friday, the Lebanese army warned a plot was being hatched to embroil Lebanon in the Syrian war. Progressive Socialist Party leader MP Walid Jumblatt says Hezbollah should be included in Lebanon's next government as politicians look for ways to reboot the cabinet formation process and tensions over the Syrian conflict simmer. As Safir Daily quoted Jumblatt saying it is not possible to isolate any party, he added that forming a new government has become highly necessary in order to remove differences and tackle them in the cabinet. Sharp divisions between the rival March 8 and March 14 camps have surfaced over the new cabinet lineup, and some March 14 officials have called for excluding Hezbollah from the government because of the party's intervention in Syria against the uprising there. A car bomb in Syria has exploded in the central city of Homs, causing casualties. Syrian State TV said the blast in the city's southern Al-Nuzah neighborhood was a suicide bomb. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says 7 people died in the attack. Activists said the Al-Nuzah district is populated largely by Alawites, member of the offshot Shiite sect to which Syrian President Bashar al-Assad belongs. Government troops are on an offensive against rebels near Homs, seizing a strategic town south of the city this week. Regime forces have retaken the village of eastern Bueda from insurgents 4 days after the nearby rebel bastion of Qusair fell to the army and Hezbollah. The village was the last insurgent-held area in Qusair, and hundreds of people who fled the area as it fell on Wednesday had taken refuge there. Hezbollah also announced the news of eastern Bueda's fall on its own television channel, Al-Manar. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says it was concerned for the fate of hundreds of fighters and civilians, among them wounded people. Officials say it is currently impossible to reach any observatory contacts in the area. State TV broadcast footage of a barren village devoid of signs of life. Its correspondent warned of the presence of explosive devices in the area. The UN Security Council has met to discuss the Austrian withdrawal of the UN disengagement observer force troops in the Golan Heights. This comes after anti-Assad rebels briefly seized the crossing between Israel and Syria this week, sending UN staff scurrying to bunkers before Syrian soldiers managed to push the rebels back. UK's ambassador to the UN and Security Council President, Mark Lyle Grant, says the mission will continue despite Austrian troops' withdrawal.
All member states were united in expressing their concern at the resurgence of fighting and at the prospect of troop withdrawals from the UNDOF mission. And everyone agreed that UNDOF should continue in its mission, even if it is temporarily reduced in its ability to fulfill the current mandate, because everyone felt that UNDOF played a key role in guaranteeing the 1974 ceasefire disengagement agreement between Israel and Syria, and also acting as a conduit of communications, including in the last few days, between Israel and Syria. It was therefore an important symbol of the stability across the Israel-Syrian border. Well, of course it is dangerous and it is much less than ideal, but I think it would be even more dangerous to withdraw the force entirely. And all 15 members of the Security Council are united on the need for UNDOF to try to continue to do its mission as best it can. But at the same time, everyone urged DPKO to accelerate its consultations and try and get some new forces into the region as soon as possible.
Coming up next, an actress in Texas has been arrested for sending rice-and-lace letters to U.S. President Barack Obama and New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg. More details after the break. Welcome back. Thousands of angry Turks have taken to the streets to join mass anti-government protests, defying Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan's call to end the worst civil unrest of his decade-long rule. From the early morning, protesters began arriving in Istanbul's Taksim Square with food and blankets to celebrate for weekends of demonstration, adding to the growing tent city in Gezi Park. Fresh demonstrations were also planned in the capital of Ankara as the unrest entered its 9th day. Erdogan had called for an immediate end to the protests, saying his Islamic-rooted government was open to democratic demands, but insisting that the protests were bordering on vandalism. Police have used tear gas and water cannon to disperse demonstrators in clashes that have injured thousands of people and left 3 dead, tarnishing Turkey's image as a model of Islamic democracy. The second hearing in the new trial of Egypt's former president Hosni Mubarak has been adjourned until June 10th. Speaking during today's brief proceedings, the judge said he will review the evidence given to the court by the fact-finding committee formed by President Mohamed Morsi. Mubarak and 7 senior security chiefs are charged with incitement over the deaths of protesters who rose up against his government. Along with his 2 sons, Mubarak is also charged with corruption. All of the defendants have pleaded not guilty to the charges leveled against them. The former president had been sentenced to life in prison by a previous court, but an appeals court ordered a retrial, citing procedural failures. A car parked outside a medical center has exploded in eastern Baghdad, killing 3 civilians and wounding 20 others. Police sources said the explosion caused heavy damage to houses and shops near blast scene in Al Amin district in eastern Baghdad. Al-Qaeda's local wing and other insurgents have been on the offensive in an attempt to provoke the kind of Shiite-Sunni bloodshed that killed thousands in Iraq in 2006 and 2007. Nearly 2,000 people have been killed in attacks in Iraq since April, the highest toll in 5 years, in surging violence that could tip the country back into intercommunal war. The violence reflects worsening tensions between Iraq's Shiite-led government and the Sunni minority, resentful at the retreatment since Saddam Hussein was overthrown by US-led invasion in 2003. Iran's presidential elections are set to kick off on June the 14th, when many Iranians will decide on the successor to current leader Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said the forthcoming election was an opportunity to testify to the people's confidence in the Islamic establishment. On Monday, U.S. President Barack Obama approved a new executive order expanding sanctions against Iran to target the Islamic Republic's currency for the first time. Many believe that the U.S. is more willing to push Iran into reform than a military strike. Iran, however, seems unwilling to compromise. Among the 8 presidential candidates, 5 are conservatives, including Iran's chief nuclear negotiator Saeed Jalili and Tehran's Mayor Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf. U.S. President Barack Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping seek to ease tensions on cybersecurity by agreeing to form a working group to discuss the issues. Hosting Xi at a two-day summit in a luxurious desert estate in Southern California, Obama said the United States welcomes China's peaceful rise, but made clear that the Beijing must play by the same rules of economic world order as other major nations. The United Nations says Chinese hackers have accessed American military secrets, an accusation China denies, and the White House itself faces questions at home over its own surveillance of emails and phone records. Obama did not shy away from the issue of cyber spying in the first day of closed-door meetings, but he took a cautious line at a news conference, stopping short of pointing the finger directly at China or threatening any consequences.
In some ways, these are uncharted waters, and you don't have the kinds of protocols that have governed military issues, for example, and arms issues, where nations have a lot of experience in trying to negotiate what's acceptable and what's not. When it comes to those cybersecurity issues like hacking or theft, those are not issues that are unique to the U.S.-China relationship. Those are issues that are of international concern. Oftentimes it's non-state actors who are engaging in these issues as well. And we're going to have to work very hard to build a system of defenses and protections, both in the private sector and in the public sector, even as we negotiate with other countries around setting up common rules of the road.
Now for news around the world in brief, police confirmed that at least 5 people are dead, including the gunman after a shooting spree in Santa Monica, California. 5 other people were wounded in the shooting rampage, which unfolded just a few miles from where President Barack Obama was speaking at a political fundraiser. The bloodshed did not appear to be related to Obama's visit to Santa Monica, and the Secret Service called it a local police matter. An actress who tried to blame her husband for sending rice and lace letters to U.S. President Barack Obama and New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg has been arrested in Texas after confessing to sending the letters herself. The actress, 35-year-old Shannon Rogers Guess Richardson of New Boston, Texas, was charged with mailing threatening communication. She faces up to 10 years of prison if convicted, according to federal prosecutors. The New York-based Princess Madeleine, who became engaged in October last year to her U.S.-British banker Christopher O'Neill, will marry before some 600 guests in the Royal Chapel at the Royal Palace of Stockholm. Princess Madeleine is 4th in line to the throne of Sweden. European royals and socialites from across the Atlantic will attend her wedding early. In the morning, a few people had started to gather outside the palace located on the Old Town Island in the center of the Swedish capital. Former